Welcome to the Heart of Business podcast, sponsored by International Facilitators Organization. I'm your host, Mo Fatalbab, and today's guest is Neil Balter, founder of California Closets, Organizers Direct, and many other companies, as well as one of the founding board members of the Entrepreneurs Organization, and an all-around great guy. In fact, one of the best bosses I've ever had. Neil, welcome to the show.
Mo, thanks for having me. Excited to be here today.
So, Neil, I think we met in 1990. Is that right? Does that sound right to you?
That sounds about right to me. Maybe 89, 90. Sure.
Yeah. So you were very instrumental in the beginning of EO and getting EO started. I would love to just hear your story of how it all came together in the early days, because as you know, there are a couple of narratives out there. And as one of the founding board members who was there day one, I think your story matters.
Yeah, my latest claim to fame at EO, Mo, is I'm currently the longest dues paying member.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. That's
I don't know if
amazing.
that's a claim or fame or, I'm not all that bright. But anyway, the beginnings of EO really started prior, where it really developed from ACE, which is the Association of Collegiate Entrepreneurs. And those were entrepreneurial clubs in all the colleges around the country, started by Vern Harnish and Doug Mellinger. And they were doing, at that time, their top 100 entrepreneurs under 30 years old, right? So
Were you one of those?
Oh,
Were you
yeah,
one
I
of
was
those?
always in the mix. I was somewhere stuck between Michael Dell and Steve Jobs, right? Whatever. But anyway, when Vern and those guys graduated, it morphed from ACE into YEO.
Young Entrepreneurs Organization. And
Young
the
Entrepreneurs
criteria then was
Organization.
you had to be under 35
I
and
think
have
it
a
was
million.
30.
It was 30 in the see, I wasn't even there at the 30 point.
So,
Yeah.
it developed into that. Really the beginning of it was Vern putting together 10 or 15 of us. We each put in $1,000 of seed money. There was probably 10 or 12 original founders. And the first few years, it was kind of a loose-knit group that we got together once or twice a year and, went to some exotic location and then talked about business and personal lives and whatnot. And it was kind of in that format for the first couple of years, right? It was this loose group of entrepreneurs that got together every 2 or 3 times a year. Then around, I don't know, 90, 91, Peter Thomas got involved.
Yeah.
Peter was a longtime YPO guy, started Century 21 up in Canada, very successful guy. And he acted as a mentor to us. And at that point, got us to develop the chapter program, where we actually have chapters and so on and so forth. And he brought in some Canadians. Peter's Canadian. He brought in some Canadians in it. And all of a sudden, it was like a rocket ship that we started opening up chapters. And, we went from, 300 or 400 members to thousands of members. I don't know. How many do they have now?
I think 18,000 now.
18,000,
Isn't that
20,000.
amazing? Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so, but the early days of EO was like the early days of a company. It was just entrepreneurial, get the job done. Nobody worried about anything. There wasn't a lot of politics. It was both engaging and fun at the same time. And, as organizations get bigger, from 200 members to 18,000, things are going to change.
Yeah.
So, it went from in the early days to YEO, Young Entrepreneurs Organization. Then it went to EO because all of us got old and we wanted to stay in, so they changed it to EO.
Right.
And then as we all got older, because now we're all in our 60s and whatnot. And then a friend of mine, now that we're in the 60s, thinks it should be changed to Oreos, Old Rich Entrepreneurs Organization.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Perhaps
Okay.
it should. But the vibe did change when they changed the age. I remember going in one day to get a forum started, and all of a sudden it felt like these people were way older than the people I was with just a year before.
There was no question about it that it changed. And in a lot of ways, it changed for both the good and the negative. But but again, we all wanted to stay in it.
Yeah.
And so, something had to give and whatnot. For a while they tried WEO, right?
Yeah.
Remember there was the
The
WEO
World Entrepreneurs are yeah, for the
organization
older
for the old
members.
guys. But it's kind of like YPO where they had, YPO and YPO Gold, and then they merged them back together. And,
Yep.
together is better.
Together
So,
is better.
um, but YEO, Oreo has been a very big part of my life over the last 30, 40 years. Most of my friends are EO members. We've traveled worldwide with tons of EO members. It's just been awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome event,
absolutely.
awesome organization. Um, and, like I said, it's grown to 18,000 people, which is unbelievable.
And you were there at the beginning.
I think I was
Incredible.
number 3 or 4.
Yeah, probably,
Uh-huh.
right? So let's talk about your first business, California Closets.
Correct.
So tell us how you started the business. Just,
Well,
how did you go from
sure.
zero to the big company it became?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you, Mo, that I had, a bolt of lightning that struck one day and said, closets is it, and this is what you're going to do for the next 40 years. It just didn't really work like that. I had just got out of high school. I went over to pick up a friend of mine to
Uh-huh.
go out partying or whatever we were going to do. I was a carpenter. I didn't want to go to college. So when I was in high school, my parents sat me down and said, where do you want to go to college? Your brother's in university. You got to go to university. And I said, no, I'm not going to university. I want to become a carpenter.
Hmm.
And my mom looks at me and she goes, you're kidding me. She goes, first of all, there are no Jewish carpenters. There was one, he had better connections than you, and look what happened to him. So true story. So anyway, I was doing carpentry and I went over to pick up my friend Steven, and his dad asked me to build some shelves in his closet. It was just that simple. And we built some shelves in the closet, came out great.
Uh-huh.
The neighbors saw it, wanted theirs done. They recommended some friends to me. And so Steven's dad, Marvin, thought it was a good idea and wanted me and Steven, his son, to start a company to do this.
Hmm.
Well, Stephen thought it was a stupid idea and didn't want to have anything to do with it, right? I kind of thought it was a good idea. So over the next couple months, I kind of worked Marvin, and I got Marvin, his dad, to do it with me without Stephen.
Ah.
So Marvin and I did it. He put up like, I don't know, $2,000 in a van that he had had, and we were off and going, right? And this was back in 1978. There was no closet companies, Mo. We
You were
were
the
the very
first.
first
You were the
ones to
first.
do it,
Amazing.
which makes a big difference, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So we were off, we were doing flyers. I was 18, and there was days, this back in 1978, I was making 400, 500, 600 bucks in a day. And back in 78, that was a lot of money. I thought I had died on to heaven. This was the greatest thing since sliced bread wrapped in plastic. So we went on a couple years like that. And then Marvin, he had done that to help me out. So he wanted me to buy him out. I bought him out for like 20 grand, paid him $1,000 a month for a couple years or something like that. And then I was off on my own.
Hmm.
And things were good. Now, part of the story with California Closets is what I call the mentor story. I
Hmm.
had a series of mentors that without them, I never would have been successful. So Marvin was my first mentor,
Hmm.
right? Great
Hmm.
guy, got me going, gave me an office, and he owned a big commercial collection agency, but gave me a little office in his building to use and whatnot. So after Marvin was gone, I went back to uh, community college and I took a nighttime marketing class, advertising. And that particular class was taught by a professor. His name was Dave Siegel. And Dave had invented the convertible sofa,
Oh.
owned a company called Living on the Riviera Convertible Sofa on the East Coast, Castro Convertibles, but it was huge. And he had sold the company and then started teaching to university to keep himself busy.
Hmm.
Anyway, Marvin or Dave Siegel took me under his wing, became my next mentor. He was fantastic. His company was, turn a couch into a bed and an extra room into a bedroom, save space.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of save space,
You were
right?
saving space by utilizing
Right?
the full closet with the shelving, the
Correct.
beautiful shelf. Yes.
So David, uh, took me under his wing, said, listen, I think this is great. I'll help you out, but there's some ground rules. Number one, clean your act up. Go cut your hair. Be
The surfer act
presentable.
didn't work.
Oh yeah, I had a hair halfway down my back. I was 21 or whatever. It was bad. Anyway, so I cleaned my act up, and David, he was the first one who got us to advertise, right? Now, in his day, he was one of the biggest advertisers at the LA Times, did double trucks and just a huge, huge advertiser. So he took me down to the Times one day, and instead of, some local little rep out in the valley and whatnot, we went to downtown, met the VP of sales and marketing, ate in the private lunchroom. It was like so above where I would have started. But those guys really helped me out. They had their art department do some ads, they got me some editorials, they got me great placement. And all of a sudden, business took off. Up until that point, I had never run an ad in a newspaper, never had done anything. And now all of a sudden we were going,
You
right?
were going. Yeah.
Oh, we were going. By this point, I probably had, yeah, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 employees, installation sales and whatnot, but we were going. And
And
then
how did you go from that stage to deciding to franchise?
well, there you go.
Yeah.
Dave Siegel,
Yeah.
that guy was the guy who gave me the idea to franchise because they had franchises, these convertible sofa stores. So he was the one who said, hey, you should franchise this thing, blah, blah, blah. Because he always thought it was a good idea. Now, let's not forget that his kids bought the first 4 franchises in the LA area.
Oh,
That's
perfect.
how much of a good idea he thought it was. So I had hired this attorney and had made a deal with him. I couldn't really afford to pay him, but I said, hey, listen, I'll stay with you for at least 5 years. I'll give you a little money up front, and then you'll have plenty of time to, recoup your investment. So we were going from there. We were advertising for franchises over the next couple of years. We probably had, I don't know, 10 or 11 franchises when the next big thing happened. And this would have been March of 84, right?
Okay.
So this is 6 years after I had been in business and a couple, 2, 3 years after I started franchising. So I was flying home from Sacramento, California. And for once, I got sat next to this really good looking woman. So, I'm sitting next to her and I'm giving her the whole pitch and whatnot. And as we're starting to land, I said, hey, listen, maybe we can go out for dinner, right? She goes, no, I don't think so. But but I'm a reporter for a newspaper and I'd love to do a story on your company after telling me all about it. So she hands me her business card and she worked for this little paper called the Wall Street Journal.
Oh,
Okay. So about a month later, on the front page of the second section, one day was real estate, one day was electronic talk, one day was small business, right?
yeah.
So they did this big article on the company, and that was a game changer. Game changer, game changer. So
Absolutely.
we had probably been getting, 4 to 10 inquiries a month for new franchises,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Advertising in Entrepreneur magazine and Inc magazine and those kind of deals. The story came out in the Wall Street Journal. We probably got 200 calls in the next week. It was unbelievable.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
it propelled us to a whole new level because all of a sudden we had credibility. Prior to the Wall Street Journal, you've got this 21-year-old kid selling closets. I mean, people would look at you with a crooked eye like, really? You think you can make money selling closets?
Right.
But then when the Wall Street Journal came out, changed everything because now all of a sudden I had the Wall Street Journal endorsing us, saying
Amazing.
this was a great idea, blah, blah, blah. And it gave us instant credibility with consumers, franchises, banks, more anybody, right? All of a sudden, people started taking us seriously.
Mm.
And it almost put us out of business because we weren't set up to handle that influx
Oh yeah.
of new franchises and whatnot. It was just absolutely incredible. But on the other side of that, it taught me a valuable lesson,
Mm,
one of the most valuable lessons, period. And what was that? Well, advertising is cursed and editorial is blessed.
uh-huh.
So you could put the same words in an ad in Entrepreneur magazine and people take it with a grain of salt, but if they read it in an article on the Wall Street Journal, they believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what did that do? That made us change our whole marketing to new franchises. So we had been advertising and whatnot. We stopped advertising. We took all of the money, hired a PR company, and then went after PR. And over the next 5 to 10 years, I had done well over 300 talk shows, been on Oprah 4 times, anywhere from Forbes magazine, Entrepreneur, any of the magazines, done big stories on the company. And so we built the company through positive PR.
Amazing.
That
Amazing.
was the driver because when that story came out, like I said, we had 8 or 10 locations. Over the next 3 or 4 years, we went up to 200 locations,
Oh my
right?
God.
And it was all from focusing on attracting new customers through public relations and editorial rather than advertising.
Brilliant. And how many years after that did you sell the business? 5, 6 years to Williams Sonoma, I think.
Yeah, about 6 years
Six.
after that.
Yeah.
Yep. And then after Dave, I had another mentor, Bill Levine,
Mm,
and Bill had started Pip Printing. If you go
hmm
back many years ago, before, in the original of the instant print, Pip
hmm
Printing, they had like 12, 1,300 locations,
mm,
right?
hmm
And he, became my next mentor, joined the board and helped me out. I'm telling you, the whole part of my success was attracting mentors to help me out over the years. And if I didn't have those 4 or 5 guys that I went to every couple of weeks or every month, I don't think we would have been as successful. There's no question about it. Listen, I didn't go to university. I didn't have an MBA. I was building this company by the seat of my pants, just
Amazing.
going and
Amazing.
blowing.
And built it in one of the most successful franchises. And
It was good. I mean, and
yeah,
the reality is the company has become a brand, right?
yeah,
It's a branded company. There's
it is
just no
still a
question.
brand. Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
because I can't tell you, I run into people and they'll say, "What do you do?" And I say, "Oh, I used to be in the closet business." And they go, "Oh, like California closets." I go,
Oh,
"Well, yeah, kind of just
exactly.
like."
Exactly. Exactly. So
So,
you've been in and out of the closet business a few times, not just that business, but a couple
right.
others after that. Is the first one the most nostalgic for you, the most meaningful for you, or do you like not look back and the most recent one is more meaningful for you?
Well, I think a little bit of both, Mo. Listen, the California closets, because it was a brand, there's always something there, right?
Yeah.
It's been, 20 years since I've ran that company, but you can't change history. I was still the founder and I'm still the guy who built that company. And because it's a brand, unlike the other companies that I started, there's always that warm and cozy feeling that comes with people knowing the brand,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Um, but the other closet companies and closet products that I did were very successful. I mean, almost as successful as California Closets, but just in a different format.
Mm, mm. And along the way, you had a French fry vending machine business.
Yes, between California Closets and my next closet company, I had got into a vending machine that made French fries. It was a experience.
Yeah.
Can't say it was particularly a good one. Everything was going good until we almost burnt down the library at the University of British Columbia. And then things started coming unglued.
Oh no.
But the good thing with the French fry company is the guy behind it was Edgar Kaiser, Kaiser Aluminum, Kaiser Medical, that Kaiser.
Uh-huh.
And having worked with him, I got introduced to the chairman of Pepsi and Goldman Sachs and, these big time people, because that's the sandbox that Edgar played in. And one thing it got me to learn is that these people are not any smarter than us. They put their pants on the same way. They're just regular people. They might have these big jobs, but uh, it gave me a lot of confidence in myself having dealt with
Mm,
people
mm.
because I went in putting them on a pedestal, came out thinking they were almost equals.
It's interesting you say that for a couple of reasons. The first is one, I've noticed the same thing, and I'm sure I've shared with you before that there are many people that I've put on a pedestal at some point or another, only to find out, like really, there's more,
Right?
there's more to the story. None of us are just like, perfect. So that was interesting to me. But the other thing to me about that is when you worked with him, my recollection is it wasn't necessarily, easy, or was it easy? I mean, I know that for
No,
me, yeah.
no, it wasn't easy. Unfortunately, Edgar has passed away, but he was, not a stable guy. I mean,
Mhm.
he owned the Denver Broncos at one point. I mean, he was big time. But
Mhm.
but I have to tell you, after the first 6 months, I just didn't respect him anymore. Right?
Oh,
You know what I'm
mm,
saying? He just
yeah,
was not, he was just full of himself, right? I
yeah.
mean, just
Well,
whatever.
that's the other thing I loved about you, Neil, always is you treated everybody like gold. It did not matter whether they were your waiter or whether your next,
Yeah.
$1 million deal. You've always treated everybody the same. And I mentioned at the beginning of this recording that you were my favorite boss. And, just to paint the picture here, as executive director of EO, I had a chairman of the board every year that changed. And that's essentially the person to whom I reported most closely, other than the board itself. And you were my favorite, hands down. And part of the reason is you gave me rope and you gave me
Right.
confidence and you gave me space. And, the criteria for EO was $1 million. It is still $1 million. And what I noticed is the smaller the business that this chairman of the board owned and had started, the more they tended to be a micromanager. And the bigger
Well,
the business, I think the more
right.
they had to let go of that.
Well, yeah, I've always been a believer. I had the sign on my desk, and I'm a Dr. Seuss believer. And what I mean by
Mm,
that is my favorite quote is, tell me what you're going to do what you tell me. Everything else is
yeah.
fine. As long as you tell me what you're going to do and you do what you tell me, go for it. Leave me alone. I'll see you
Yes.
at the end of it. And that I always believe
Yes.
in people is just tell the truth. Tell me what you're going to do what you tell me. We're going to get along just fine. That's simple.
I love it. I love it.
Doesn't
I
doesn't
love
need
it.
to be
Well,
overly complicated.
yeah. No, it's you've been one of my mentors, I'll tell you that. And it's just been a pleasure not only to have that in terms of how much I've learned from you, but also I treasure the friendship we've developed through that. You've been incredible. So
And
Neil, yeah.
after the French fry company, I actually started another closet deal with another EO guy, Kevin Harrington, right?
Oh,
So
and tell
so
people who Kevin Harrington is.
well, Kevin is the king of infomercials, right? I mean, and he
Yeah.
was one of the original founders of EO, been a longtime friend, and very super successful, Kevin. Anyway, I was living down in Barbados, and Kevin came to visit, and we were on the beach at, 1 in the morning, had a few too many drinks, and we conjured up this infomercial for this 30-minute closet in the box, right? That
Oh,
anybody could do. So him and I did it. We did a 30-minute infomercial, eventually got it into Home Depot and Lowe's and all of that stuff. And it was very successful. And Kevin was fantastic about it and whatnot. And that 30-minute closet makeover kind of led me into Organizers Direct,
mm,
which was very similar to California Closets, except it wasn't franchised, it was dealerships. So one of the problems that with dealerships and franchises, franchise is very legally um, there's a lot of legal work. It's very burdensome and whatnot. Independent dealers are way easier. You don't have all the regulatory burdens and the FTC and all that stuff. But the big difference is they can't trade under a common name.
Mm,
Where all of them traded under California closets, the organizers direct, we had 300 dealers, but they have a different name in every city.
wow.
So
Wow. I didn't know that.
you're not building that. Now you can say, hey, John's Closet's an authorized dealer of organizer direct products. No different from
Mhm.
DuPont Carpet. You see John's Carpet, authorized dealer of DuPont, right? They're dealers. So you can use the
Yeah.
name in there, but you can't call it that. But
Yeah.
organized direct, super successful, almost as successful as California Closets. Um, Different, but very good. And
So did that give you a sense of a comeback after the French fry business didn't go as well as you'd like?
sure it did. And it
Yeah.
gave me that self-confidence again. But the French fry business wasn't my fault. It was Edgar's nightmare. But anyway, um, but doing organizers direct, you go back to what you know, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here's the deal, Mo, I'm sitting here, I'm 64, I'm retired, but if I wanted to, I could start another closet company tomorrow and within 18 months have 100, 150 locations. Because at one point it becomes wash, rinse, repeat, right?
You've
There's
done
not
it
a
enough.
lot,
Yes.
not a lot of
Yes.
mystery on how to do it at this point. It's just a matter of doing the work, right? I know
Yes.
what needs to get done to make it successful and attract dealers and so on. But you got to do the work. There's no shortcut.
There's no shortcut. So Neil, I want to shift gears a little bit. And with all your incredible achievement and success and everything I've said about just really looking up to you for nearly 3 decades now, there have been some challenges along the way. Can you talk about a couple of
Well,
those and how
sure.
you got through them?
Mo, everybody has challenges. As I like to say, nobody gets a free pass in this world. Nobody.
Mm, mm.
Everybody's got an aunt with Alzheimer's and something. It just everybody's dealing with something. And over the years, yeah, we've dealt with stuff. Our son is autistic, right?
Mm.
So we've dealt with that, but we pretty well um, embraced the autism community from early on. We've raised, I don't know, probably over $10 million in money for the autism community.
And
Uh,
Neil, I gotta just give you a shout out because your marketing skills are just incredible. So for those people out there that are not part of your network, every year I get an email that says time to pay the Balter tax. Translation, donation to Autism Speaks.
exactly. Well,
And how old is Jack now? He's 22.
21.
21. And so
Yeah.
for 21 years, I've been incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to help support this cause because it is an important cause. And the part that brings me to tears, as you know, is when my cousin's son was born,
Sure.
and we suspected he might be on the spectrum. And you, my friend, took 2 hours and a PowerPoint and sat with him and his wife and went through all this stuff with him. And I have to tell you, that kid wasn't speaking and he now talks. So,
Yeah. One
I
of the
can't
things
thank you enough.
one of the things that I've done for years, Mo, is, and now that I've moved to Mexico, not as much, but I've dealt with 2 to 3 parents a month that
Mm,
are newly diagnosed parents. And it's just heartbreaking
yeah,
because, it's not like the kid broke an arm in 6 weeks, he's fine. This is a forever deal.
yeah.
And, they're raw, they're upset. And so one of the things that I've done is, like I said, I had a program for newly diagnosed families to help them through that first 90 days because it's so overwhelming to them. It's just overwhelming to them. And I enjoy it. I mean, it's emotional.
Yeah, of
It's hard. You never get through one of these meetings without someone crying. Um,
course.
but but I see how it improves the lives of the kids and the parents to help them through this time. And so my wife and I, we've always been willing to do it, and we've done it quite a bit. I mean, like I said, I had a whole program that I put together for it. And it's important, when Jack got diagnosed when he was four,
Yeah.
4 or 5, I think 5, but whatever. At that point, it was 1 in 156 kids that were getting diagnosed with autism. Today, it's down to 1 in 38.
Wow.
1 in 38 kids
Oh my
are getting
God.
diagnosed with autism, and it's a lifelong deal.
The
The
life.
problem with autism, it's in that same deal as Alzheimer's, as any of the neurological diseases. If they're the hardest ones for them
Yeah.
to get their hands around.
Yeah.
Epilepsy, any of the neurological things, it's just tough.
But
So,
you have literally just, I mean, I would say it's miraculous how you've changed Jack's life through all the work you've done
well,
and all the
yeah,
treatments, right? And so,
it,
how is Jack today? He's driving. He lives on his own.
yeah,
He's got a.
well, he's got his own condo now, but he's at ASU. He's doing good. I mean, he'll always have autism because autism never goes away, but he's functioning,
He's
right?
fun. Yeah.
He lives on his own,
Yeah.
right? At the end of the day, he's functioning. And there's a big spectrum with autism. 30% of those kids never talk,
Yeah.
ever, right? And so you got this big spectrum from low to high functioning. Jack's pretty high functioning, but Mo, there was probably literally 10 years that he was doing 40 to 60 hours a week of therapies of some sort,
Mm,
speech, OT, PT, ABA, music, whatever. And because the one thing that everybody agrees on with autism is that one of the most important things is early intervention.
mm,
You got to get early, because if you get a kid at 4, he can
mm.
only be 4 years behind,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And massive intervention, because you've got until about the time they're 12 or 13 is where you get the biggest benefits of all that intervention.
I
So
love
it's
it.
tough. I mean,
It's the-
and it you accept it for what it is, you deal with it. Um, there's times that I watch the interaction between my friends and their sons that are that same age. It hurts a little bit that I don't get that same stuff. He's never going to play sports. He's never going to golf. He's never going to be able to do any of those kind of things with me, but he does other things, right? And so you look for the positives and you just put the negatives in a box and shove it off to the side.
So, first of all, thank you for sharing all that. But what you just said really sums up how I would quote Neil Balter. And I'm going to use a quote that I've heard from you a million times, and it is, you get much more with sugar than you do with vinegar. Can you share with us a story about, a meaningful story for you in the last couple of minutes about a situation where you got more with sugar than vinegar?
Well, Mo, I live my life on that. And
Mm,
what you said before, I live my life on, I treat everybody the same, right? And in a positive way, right?
you do.
I'm a positive guy. I get rid of the negativity. I always put a positive tude on it. I put the best spin on it that I can, because again, there's no upside on focusing on the negative.
No
You got to
upside.
deal with the negative. You deal with it, you move on. But to focus on it, what good comes from it?
Yeah.
Nothing,
Yeah.
right? When I run into someone who's upset, what do? I kill them with kindness. I lower
Mm,
my voice. I talk softer. You kill them with kindness, because eventually they're going to calm down, right? So you just, the world, as I mentioned before, Mo, one of the reasons we live in Mexico 6 months of the year is because there's you find in the country right now, there's this underlying anger out there that's just horrible, right? And
mm.
people are on edge and whatnot. And people down in Mexico, they're friendly, they're nice, they just want to have a good time. They don't talk about politics. It's just, you know, it's what I like. I'll deal with negative, but I want to not be around it as much as possible. I just don't like it. Okay. People that focus on the negative all the time.
I agree. I agree. And that is something else that I absolutely have seen and learned from you 1,000 times over, and that is you're always focused on the positive. And there's no question. I remember I had some bad news for you in my very early 3 months at EO, and I was just petrified to even call you and say, Neil, here's what happened.
Right.
And sure, true to the point, you're like, Mo, no big deal. We'll get through it. Onwards.
Moving
What's the
on.
next item on your agenda? It was beautiful.
Exactly. Moving
Absolutely.
on. Let's
Yes.
let's get through it.
My friend, it has been a pleasure speaking with you and having you on this show. A lot of great lessons and a great story that I know people will absolutely enjoy. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Happy to help anytime, Mo.
You can follow the
Anytime.
Heart of Business podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also, podcast reviews have a real impact on the podcast visibility, so please leave a review to help others find the show. Finally, you can find all our episodes on our website, internationalfacilitatorsorganization.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.